Let's unravel Gita's world. Hello and welcome. This is the 105th episode of Gita's World. And yes, this is a new setup. But this is not new for us, Gita, because, the initial days we often used to record in the studio over Zoom. So I'm glad to be back in this cozy setup. How are you?
I'm fine. Not coming to office is the reason why we're recording from my home, and Anna's in the studio. But the conversation will be as lively as it is when we are in the studio setup.
Yes, right. And listeners and viewers, if you want to grab any of the books that Geeta has, and quite a collection. Although somebody said that if you see any book in any person's home, please don't, and please don't be this shameless to ask them. You can, if you can spend a hefty amount on buying clothes, you can spend your own amount of money on buying books. So don't be shameless. Don't ask for books to be lent.
Even if you ask, my only problem, Anna, is that when they ask and they borrow, some of
Yeah,
them forget to return. That's
return.
the biggest problem. I love the idea of sharing books, exchanging books, reading and returning,
Yeah,
but not returning is not done.
right. Yes, noted. Today, Geeta, we are discussing something that has been on the news. India Today Global has also covered it quite extensively, and like many other media outlets, because Sri Lanka and most of the headlines that actually floated around in India was that India has lost another friend in South Asia. Uh, Although the new president, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, or AKD as he's called, he's just recently said that he doesn't want to be sandwiched between India and China. So I think you'll be able to, make us understand a bit better whether India has actually lost a friend or not in South Asia. But let me also give like a brief background to this. Anura Kumara Dissanayake, he represents the Marxist Janatha Vimukthi Peramuna, or JVP as it's called, and its broader front, the National People's Power Party. And he triumphed over incumbent President Ranil Wickremesinghe and opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. And Dissanayaka secured 42.31% of the vote. Premadasa with 34%, Wickremesinghe just 17%, and Namal Rajapaksa is the son of former President and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. He garnered less than 3% vote. So that is quite telling. And after victory, the Sanayaka said, we can turn this country around, build a stable government, and move forward. For him, this is not a position, but a responsibility. Considering the kind of frenzy that Sri Lanka has been caught in since 2022, this is quite telling for a statement. So we'll try to understand in this episode what does this victory mean for Sri Lanka, because Dissanayike's rise and election reflects a changing political landscape, because this was the first time that a Marxist Leninist party has secured power in Sri Lanka. So they don't have a reference point. We don't have a reference point to assess them. So what really motivated were the voters? What kind of messaging does it convey? And the mood of Sri Lanka. We'll try to assess that. So first, let's try to understand from you, Geeta, that many analysts and local journalists also, they're saying that this election was actually, the people voted in anger. So this was more of like against that, we don't want to vote against the Rajapaksas, the corrupt brothers as they call them. So I want to understand that, was it like a vote more of like against the establishment, or was it more for this Anayake?
Well, Anna, the term Tina factor, that's there's no alternative, normally is reserved for the incumbent. When in a country the incumbent comes to power, they say there is no alternative, that the opposition was not strong enough, and that's why people had no choice but to elect the
Yeah.
incumbent. But this is also a Tina factor kind of a situation where Sri Lanka is reeling under a massive economic crisis. And the people have been rather upset and, like you said, angry with anybody who's come to power and has failed to deliver the promises that they made. We do know that the former president, or who was just the incumbent, Ranil Wickremesinghe, tried a lot to bring normalcy back to the island nation after the debacle or the disaster, so to say, with the economy when the Rajapaksas were in power. Having said that, we see the numbers. We're seeing that Premadasa was one of the front runners.
Yeah.
But I think this is all about not just change, it's about absolute change. That they did not want anybody with legacy, anybody who was in power, whose father was in power, the ones who've seen power, who've seen taken Sri Lanka to a particular in a particular direction. So this is a vote of anger, but it is also one that wanted absolute change. So what does Dissanayake really represent? He is, you cannot call him absolutely Marxist or left-leaning, but he is left-leaning.
Right.
His party certainly is. His party, when they started, had opposed quite a few positions, policy positions of the previous administrations, and which included decisions on India. And we will talk about that in a bit. But I think to your question on why AKD, it just seems like Anura Kumara Dissanayake right now had the right policy positioning, what people thought or bought into. He positioned himself right, he campaigned right, he campaigned well on various fronts. But how much will he be able to deliver is the question. Fixing the economy, that's the first statement he made after taking power. But it's not going to be an easy job. He does not want to be looked at, or the country be looked at as though being sandwiched between two Asian giants, that's China and India. But unfortunately, that certainly is the case. So how is he going to navigate that space is going to also be very important. Two questions on Tamils in Sri Lanka, a very major, important minority constituent in Sri Lanka. He actually wooed the Tamil voters quite a lot, like Sajith Premadasa, and that's where you'll see that the numbers and the percentages were quite well. There was actually one candidate who was propped up, a Tamil candidate who was propped up by the Indian diaspora, and with a lot of support of the Tamils. But he came in way lower in terms of percentage, 12% or lower in garnering the Tamil votes. So people are looking at what he has to offer. He was not for neither the India-Lanka Accord, nor was he in favor of devolution of powers, which is the 13th Amendment. These are important aspects, but that's just one part. The bigger story, the larger picture over here is that people had no confidence in anybody who had seen power in the past and had led the country. And so they wanted an absolute change. AKD seems to be that one face. And therefore, there is no alternative right now lies with the face of AKD, where he's become the alternative rather than anybody who's seen power in Sri Lanka.
Right. I think, I was speaking to a local journalist over there, and she said that, I mean, Dissanayake has, like, the people are actually so much enamored by the personality of his, because he has sold these, romantic ideas, this very idealistic visions that, okay, will eradicate the corruption, will, stabilize the economy. So this romantic idea that he has sold has, and also I would like to, and she said, narrated us an incident. She said that one of her colleagues actually went to buy a cigarette, and this lady was there, and he said, "Kitna hua? Like, how much does it cost?" And the lady said, "It's 100 Indian rupees." then the person said, "Oh, this is too costly." So she said, "Don't worry, kal se nahi hoga," which means that from tomorrow this won't happen. This will be halved. So that is the kind of, the confidence and the trust that people are relying in this Anake. And lest we forget, last year, like in 2020 general elections, the NPP alliance secured just three of the total 225 seats. So that indeed is quite, like, reflects the mood of the Sri Lankans. Um, Also, Geeta, like you mentioned, yeah, I just want to focus that, yes, of course, we know that, the people wanted to vote for a change, and that's why they did not opt for Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was incumbent president, nor for Sajith Premadasa. But still, like, if you see the kind of poll promises that both Dissanayake and Sajith Premadasa advocated for, they were more or less same, like similar only. Despite coming from different political backgrounds, they focused on first, like, pledging to secure and protect Sri Lanka's poor from the harsh impacts of austerity. And also one factor that they both vowed to abolish the executive presidency. This is a system which concentrates power heavily in the president's hands. And they also said that, they'll tackle corruption, they have a plan to recover stolen public assets. So more or less, their entire electoral poll and promises revolve around the similar things. So what really then, apart from the fact that, of course, Sajid Premadasa is, seen closer to the elite, but what really then, you know, uh, gained and favored Dissanayaka over Sari Premadasa here? I mean, I'm comparing both the two here.
I think it is that very same thing that you said, the idealism that he's bringing to the table, the fact that this country has seen so much corruption, the fact that the country was literally looted
Hmm.
by the powers that be who were in place, and is the reason why they really needed somebody to tell them that yes, we are going to tackle corruption, we're going to do away with corruption, we're going to do away with the crony capitalism, the favoring of certain clique within the system, the giving of all the deals to family members, all of that. He
Hmm.
does not come with that baggage. And I think that not coming with that baggage in itself was an advantage for this and I. Okay, not many in India even have heard of his name actually,
Right.
and they were stunned to see that there's a new face, although those following Sri Lankan elections knew that there is going to be a change, most probably. But
Hmm.
it was a tough fight between Sajith Premadasa and Anura Dissanayake. We did know that Ranil Wickremesinghe would be trailing and that he's not going to do very well this election.
Yeah.
Although he did try to bring Sri Lanka, even if not back even now, but bring uh, some semblance of normalcy when it comes to the economy. But that doesn't cut it right now. Right now, they really want some radical shift. And that radical shift, that a clean ideological plate
Yeah.
with a radical change is what Dissanayake was offering. And I suppose people bought into that.
Hmm.
Whether if it's the right way, whether if Sri Lanka will be brought out of its misery, is something we'll have to wait and see. Anna, all leaders make very tall promises, but Anurag Dissanayake is not coming just with tall promises. He's also, from the word go,
Hmm.
has been a little pragmatic. In fact, quite pragmatic. This whole idea of he's anti-Indian, pro-China doesn't cut it. For
Yeah.
those who've not seen his first statements, the first meetings, his engagements, will not understand how he's trying to balance China and India right out here. And
Right.
that's very important. So he's coming with a radical shift, tall promises. And at this point in time, when you have nothing to lose, I suppose that's what people really want.
Yeah. Very interesting that you say that, considering, one of the major challenges that I mean, most analysts also believe is that whether he'll just be a proxy or like a better alternative. Because, like you mentioned, that he's a Marxist Leninist, but
But proxy to
he's
whom? A proxy
to
to
to the traditionals of his party, because
uh,
the thing is that like he has softened his Marxist-Leninist ideology, but he also believes in, getting foreign investments and foreign aid as opposed to the Marxist ideology. So has been softened by him, but it also means, I mean, there is a skepticism whether, because the entire JVP, if you see this, the JVP alliance, the group consists of leftist groups with various leftist ideologies such as democratic socialism, revolutionary socialism. So, and considering in 1980s, we saw, his party is associated with, like there's a historical baggage with the uprisings in 1980s. So people fear whether he'll actually be able to, make decisions independent and distant from the traditionals of his party, because that's what is he is projecting, that okay, I'm coming with a modernist idea, but to really distance himself from the traditionals, do you think that's possible, or that will be like a hindrance for him?
again, a very interesting question, because you see, this is in the history of Sri Lankan presidential elections for the first time that the elections had a recount,
Yeah, yeah.
and preferential voting was taken into account, which is where he then found himself uh, a winner. So yes, he's dependent on party and party leadership as well. And the late Rohan Vijayveera, who founded the party, did have very strong Marxist leanings, left leanings, but having a bit of socialism in your
Mm.
entire outlook towards how you're looking at your country is not absolutely a bad thing. You know, a lot of people put and it's a very Western thing to do, which now countries in our parts of the world have also adopted, to
Yeah.
malign and defame any Marxist ideology. That shouldn't be the case.
Mm.
Leaders having socialist leaning in countries that are not doing well and have huge poor population is in fact a good thing. We have socialism inscribed in our constitution,
Right.
which speaks volumes. I mean, a lot of people want to do away with the word secular and socialism, Anna, but that again speaks volume of where your country is headed. These are
Mm.
two very important aspects of a country that is very diverse, and of a country that has a huge poor population living under a certain line of economic parameters.
Mm.
And Sri Lanka is reeling under that in a major way. So if he's bringing that to the table, it's a good thing. I don't think that at this point in time, no matter what the leadership says, that the leadership would want the government toppled. You
Yeah.
see, they've come to power with great difficulty. The agenda for the party would be also to stay in power.
Mm.
Breaking up the party and pulling him, out of office would only further instability in the country. Would the party really want that?
Mm.
Would other partners really want that at this point in time? It doesn't seem like that would be the most sensible thing to do. So,
Right.
proxy or not, I think he is quite in control, and he is trying to balance this whole idea of having the socialist ideology
Mm.
quite meshed the with the policies that will take the country forward in inviting foreign investments, which is again a key speech statement that he had made in his initial remarks, that he does invite he will invite foreign investments. He did say something about Indian investments and welcoming them in a speech informally. So that is also very important. These are very
Mm.
important aspects. I don't think he's going to steer away from the fact that right now they need IMF loans. Right now they need approval of those loans. And the single guarantor is not China, it is
Yeah.
India.
India. Yeah.
So that's a very important aspect. Um, when he says that he wants these policies carried forward, I
Mm.
don't think anybody would be so extreme not to allow investments at a point when Sri Lanka really needs them. If not anything else, to at least start looking at a structure, an economic structure, where they can start repaying the loans. Forget about the
Right.
fact that they also need to look strong enough economically to be getting the loans.
Mm.
There has to be prospect in the future for IMF to dole out those loans, and that prospect will only come about if he balances his socialism or left-leaning policies with the idea of having real capital investment coming into the country.
Right. The IMF bailout that you mentioned, Geeta, in March 2023, last year, Sri Lanka had secured a $2.9 billion bailout from the IMF. And by June, Sri Lanka had made agreements with China and other creditors to restructure $10 billion of its bilateral debt. And Japan, India, and China, they are all important players in helping Sri Lanka. But uh, so restructure this debt structure. But Dissanayake has indicated that he may want to renegotiate parts of this debt deal. And there's one concern, which is that like his plan to discuss with the IMF how to adjust their program, how to lower taxes and free up public money for tax relief and investment, considering he has specifically promised to remove VAT on essential items like healthcare, like education, like food. But these changes could make it harder for Sri Lanka to meet the deficit targets, which is agreed upon in the IMF deal. So you think, I mean, what should his steps be to actually repay the debt? Because if he's saying that he wants to remove VAT, then the deficit would,
Well,
heighten up.
and a good question, but that's hard to tell how he's going to do it.
Mm,
And I'm no economist advising the Sri Lankan government to be saying what he should be doing, but
yeah,
this is where the policy shifts and changes will happen. That there are certain things which are non-negotiable. You went into the elections promising a few things, and you will have to now ensure that that promise is
mhm,
kept. And that is in the education, healthcare sector, where you will have to lower taxes or do away with VAT, so to say, because that's what your promise has been. And that is something that's a party line as well. So in that, what do you need to do? You will have to restructuring of your loans, restructuring of your debts, restructuring of the repayment timelines and how it needs to be done. And for that, that's why he will have to balance it out. He will have to balance it out by getting those investments in. And why do I say that? Is because in the entire power struggle between China and India, they do hold that card, Anna. Sri Lanka is strategically very positioned very, very importantly. And
right.
whether if it is India or China, nobody wants to not be friends with Sri Lanka only for its geostrategic position in the Indian Ocean. And that's why they have that card to use, that we want these investments. And you will see India investing, you will see China investing, you will see China and India wooing
Mm,
Sri Lanka as well. How will he take advantage of that is the thing. Because in the past, we've seen Sri Lanka come to fall to its knees, is because of the debt traps.
yeah,
So getting out of that, even though they say that they are pro China and they have a China leaning, but I think it's a wake up call to see that you get a deal that's best for Sri Lanka,
mm,
not what's best to further the interests of your party vis-a-vis China, because
right.
you're a leftist party. That shouldn't be the case. And I think over here you will see AKD, and at least from what I've seen, these are very initial stages, Anna, so we can't read too much into what he's saying.
Yeah.
But with what he's saying, the action, the balancing act that he's trying to do, I think he's being rather pragmatic, which
Mm,
is a good thing for him. And yes, lessons learned from the past, that you might, in your whole idea of one party comes to power and wants to show India down, so that's why hence goes ahead and cuts deals with China, and then that leads to a disaster such as this, should not really happen. So he's looking at the social policies that have to be in place that are completely intertwined with the economic policies, because it has to do with education and healthcare and doing away with taxes, but how we can balance that out with investments that have to come in, but how will they come in?
Right.
Loans, how are they going to be structured with the IMF? Repayment of loans, how are those aspects going to be taken care of? So they're looking at all these aspects very, very closely and trying to see that investments don't fall short of the idea that he has in taking Sri Lanka forward. And therefore, if you see the first call on with the president was none other, or foreign diplomat was none other than the Indian High Commissioner to Colombo.
Yeah.
It
Right.
was Santosh Shah
Santosh
who
Shah,
went
yes.
ahead and met the president. One of the first leaders to congratulate him was Prime Minister Modi. And he did respond to that congratulatory message as well on X, or as well Twitter. We're also looking at the visits that were made when Sri Lankan president, now president, was in India. And he met with top leadership, including External Affairs Minister Jaishankar. And when National Security Advisor was in Colombo not so long ago for the Columbus Security Dialogue, he met with all of them and all the presidential candidates, especially those they thought are the serious challengers. And Sajith Premadasa as also AKD were two such very important presidential candidates who National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met. So these are very important aspects, Anna. You cannot do away with the fact that India does not want to be caught unawares. India, again, does not want to be caught completely, in shock and with sudden changes in Sri Lanka. And they're monitoring the situation, and they monitored it well enough to engage Anura Dissanayake well before his win. Now we'll only have to wait and see how Anura Dissanayake balances the decisions that the party would want him to take forward with the decisions that are good for the country in a way to bring it back or bring it out of the economic crisis.
Yeah. I understand everything that you said, Geeta. Still, I was wondering that you said that this is a wake-up call for Sri Lanka to really, because he's being pragmatic. So if he says that he doesn't want to be sandwiched between India and China, so well, I mean, he's doing that balancing act. But then, this is also like many critics are saying. Do you think this is also a wake-up call for India as well? Because not long ago, Geeta,
Absolutely.
yeah, not long ago. I just want to cite this. When the entire, Bangladesh thing happened, the collapse, the Sheikh Hasina fleeing, and everything, and there were several analysts who were saying that okay, at least Bangladesh, theek hai, will figure it out in terms of foreign diplomacy, in terms of how we are going to engage with the new government whenever it comes to power. But if you see Sri Lanka, there is a hope. Why? Because I remember. I mean, I'll not reveal the name, but there was this one person who said that Sri Lanka is a good example of how the Modi government played its cards really well after the 2022 economic crisis, when India stepped in and extended financial aid worth $4 billion. And even as Chinese FDI dried up in the past 4 years, India pumped in close to $500 million in investments. And then India's private sector giants also stepped up. With ITC, with Adani Group making huge investments in private projects. So, suggesting that, India was so quick to really engage with Sri Lanka, making these huge investments, to making it believe that okay, we are invested in you, which is, I mean, of course, that the entire 22 crisis, India was there to help. But despite that, we cannot, of course, have like a control over which way the tide is turning. But I'm still saying, despite that, we are in this fix right now. We are in this position right now that things can go either way. So this is like I mean, we can say that the neighborhood first policy of India, or the neighborhood policy of India, is quite failing, and we really need to do something about that. You think so?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say failing completely, Anna, because India tries very hard. India tries very hard to engage,
Hmm.
but it's a race. It's a race with China, and China comes with a lot of money and investments. Even now, there are major investments in Sri Lanka, major investments in Bangladesh, huge ones in Nepal, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Myanmar, um, and the list goes on. So you're fighting a battle with a country over supremacy.
Hmm.
But the only difference is that when China is doing it, it is doing it actually uh, to gain control in many ways of how a country deals and engages. When India does it as a development partner. We don't tell, I mean, we do tell, but we don't tell them what to do like the Chinese do.
Yeah.
So for India, it has always been a constant fight in every country. Whether if you're losing grip or not, yes, sometimes we've been caught completely unaware, and that has hit us really badly, like the case in the Maldives. Not this time around, last time around, when Nasheed was ousted.
Hmm.
It was a disaster for India and a wake up call that you need to monitor situation very, very closely. Having said that, what do you do when you have a country that you're engaging with? You're even saying, you tell us what you want, we're here, so on and so forth. And despite all of that, you see China coming in and getting the deals, and the countries think sometimes that, oh, you have a big brother attitude, so we will go with, whether if it's good for them or not,
Yeah.
go with the other. And some of the countries have started showing the China card to India time and again. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to for India to be shown the China card every now and again, when India is not. India is acting as a development partner with many of these countries.
Hmm.
Have we been caught approaching very important projects very late? Yes. There are so many projects that were offered to India in the past, and India did not bother to take them up. And sure enough, gave space to China to enter the fray. So, yes, India should fault itself for not being pragmatic. That's the word I think today,
Yeah.
enough to really sweep in and grab those projects that were being handed over to India on a platter.
Right.
And so that's where we fault India. But if you see in the recent times, the administration, New Delhi has made a lot of efforts, has monitored. Things have not gone India's way because right now China, as a very powerful country in these countries, also has a lot of sway and influence, Anna, and you have to consider that.
Hmm.
If you're asking whether if India did its job or not, even if India was trying to do its job, if you have a country like China that's coming and becoming a roadblock, and the country in question that we're talking about thinks that it's in their national interest right now not to go with India but to go with China, then so be it. And it's
Yeah.
not just China, there are other players also, in the fray. So for India, it has been a tough, tall ask. But if you ask me, and if India wants to consider itself not just a Vishwa Bandhu, which is a global friend,
Yeah.
but which has become a term now more often used than the one that was used earlier, which was Vishwa Guru.
Right. Yes.
And if you wanted to be a Vishwa Guru, then you should have acted uh, on some issues that and done better on some fronts, which is where I think that leadership requires um, capital. You need to invest, and it
Hmm.
cannot just be words. It cannot be political, statements and speeches. You
Hmm.
need to act on the ground. It has to be economic investments as well. It has to be political investment as well. That we are politically and economically invested. I don't know if we were doing enough, at least in some places, and I think in some countries it was to our detriment, such as Bangladesh,
Yeah.
when you have leaders calling Bangladeshi immigrants names
Yeah.
just just because there are elections happening in a certain state in our country. That doesn't do well. Look at how anti-India some Bangladeshis have become. Similarly, over here, it was important to see how India was engaging Sri Lanka, and just saying that if they're engaging China, talking about Sri Lanka in a manner in which there are signals of warnings, that certainly again would not go down well. So yes, they did play the China card, and they played it every time to their advantage, which was, I think, short-sighted in nature, because in the long run, it was it was not to their advantage.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we should do a separate episode from Vishwa Guru to Vishwa Bandhu. We could explore that. And in India's defense, I think, and countering China, let's not forget the infamous Hambantota port deal, which AKD and JVP have been critical of these, Chinese investments. But the party still shares a great bond with the Communist Party over there. So this is like a stark
Because
reminder.
Hambantota was exploitative, Anna, if
Yeah.
not anything else, because it was exploitative, and anything that is not people centric,
Hmm.
uh, his party will oppose, and that's why they were opposing it, not because they were not ideologically inclined towards China.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually like a great point. But still, it should not be lost in history and should serve as a reminder in terms of, how it is going to engage with China. So yeah, I think thank you, Geeta. Just, as we end this episode, one of the local journalists who was telling this to me that it might happen that because of the Sanhalis and the Tamilians and most of the Tamilians voting for Sajith Premadasa, so it might happen that with the election of AKD, the racist sentiment between the Sinhalese and the Tamils could be on a rise. So, and they have their own share of violent uprisings. So, you think that's a possibility? That it will be fueled like anything.
I don't think there can be a violent uprising anymore. That
Yeah.
is not something that any government in Sri Lanka will allow. They suffered greatly, but yes, for those uh, who see again, AKD comes with a very mixed sort of a policy on Sri Lanka, on Tamils in Sri Lanka. On the one hand, he will not look at war crimes against the LTT. On the other hand, he does not approve of devolution of power. I don't think he will allow any civil unrest between the Sinhalese and the Tamils.
Yeah.
Yes, Sajith Premadasa did garner more votes and more support from the Tamils, but AKD also did not fare very badly, which means that he was trying to woo the Tamil voters.
Yeah.
Again, goes to show that he actually is looking at integration. How that's really going to happen is something we'll have to wait and see, because uh,
Mm.
he doesn't approve of the 13th Amendment. So there has to be some forward movement in assimilation. And I suppose he'll work towards that, because I don't see any leader right now, whether it's Sajith Premadasa. We can't talk about the Rajapaksas, because, the whole LTT agitation and the fight against the LTT, or the defeat of the LTT, happened under Mahinda.
Yes.
But whether Sajith Premadasa, or for that matter, AKD, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, I don't think anybody wants civil unrest right now. The country can't afford it.
Mm.
People can't afford it, and people also know that. What they really, really should be looking at is how they can bring in equality. So, if
Right.
he's left leaning, if he's socialist in nature, he should be looking at an equalitarian
Mm.
regime, a
Yeah.
regime that looks at equalitarian policies, and how he brings that about to bring development all across Sri Lanka, including the Tamil areas, is something we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, like you said, I think Sri Lanka is one country that will closely watch. Besides being a neighbor, it's definitely, the kind of developments that it has gone through in the past few years as a country in itself, and not looking at like a neighbor kind of a perspective. In itself, it's a learning, and considering it is the new government is coming with a clean slate and with no reference, no historical reference at all, it will be actually quite interesting for us, on Gita's world to, observe. And maybe in the later episodes, we can do another episode on, on how his governance is faring. So thank you so much, Geeta,
Thank you, Anna.
and thank you to all our listeners and viewers. Let us know what you think about this new setup, whether you should continue doing it over Zoom or we should oscillate, do it alternatively.
We should.
Yeah.
Every time I'm not around, we normally end up
Yes.
doing this.
Yes.
When I'm abroad or on some reporting assignment, we do a lot of this too.
Mm.
But it's been a while, yes.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
yes, do send
Yeah.
your feedback.
Yeah.
Either way, it's the content that matters. So please
Yes.
write to us, comment, tell us,
Yes.
uh, share your feedback. That's very important. Constructive feedback is always welcome.
Yes.
Positive feedback is always matter of happiness. So
Yeah.
just let us know what you think.
Right. And the last episode, Geeta, Canada's the immigration policy bill. We have like over 500 comments on the video. So it's actually quite nice to, go through all the comments and get also like a reality check as to how we are performing, and if we are missing or we are explaining something like really nicely. So that's definitely a pat on the back. So keep those coming in. There's a number also you can reach out to, which is 8588966996. And you could also email us on pods@indiatoday.com and just keep commenting and leave your ratings. Thank you, and we'll be back next week.